Hello, Jasmine.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
For sure. It's going to be fun. We're going to get started here in just a minute. We'll get Ashley all set up. It's going to be great. There you go, Ashley. And then Ashley, if you can hide the participants, I should do that before. The non video participants, that'd be great. See if I can do this for a second here.
I apologize if there are construction noises.
Can't hear them yet, but if so, it's just going to add to the awesomeness, right?
Okay.
Add to the, it's going to add to it. I'm excited. I'm excited. Let's start. Welcome everyone to the Coaching to Flourish podcast. I am your host, John Andrew Williams. Today, my guest is Jasmine Raskas. She is from St. Louis. She is a graduate of the Coach Training EDU program. She lives in St. Louis. Quick bio. She is a rock climber and an artist.
Retired. I'm a retired.
Retired. And you've battled. You've had challenges that you've overcome to flourish and to give back to your community and to be a member of, or co-program director of the St. Louis chapter of the ICF. You've put together a coaching workbook program. Her website is Chaos to Order Coaching. And we can talk more about that as we get along here. And you're also involved with Artists First in St. Louis and on a life mission to share the value of creative wellness that overcomes assumptions and limiting beliefs to see what is possible. Welcome, Jasmine, to the Coaching to Flourish podcast. I am super psyched.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate this opportunity.
It's going to be fun. So today we're going to dive into Jasmine's story. She's going to lead me through an exercise, the hero's journey. And then we're going to talk a little bit about have some time for Q&A and, really just dive deep on some of the projects that she has going on. And next week, she's putting on a webinar for us around visual, like thinking about coaching concepts from an artistic visual color standpoint, which I am excited to share and explore. Welcome everyone, and welcome community. It's exciting to see everyone here. I hope everyone's doing well at home, staying safe, and hopefully this podcast provides a boost of energy and excitement as we're moving forward here. Where are we? Excellent. And then, hold on. Excellent. Good. Where to begin, Jasmine? Where to begin? How are you? How are you doing? How is life?
Good. Well, I cleaned up my studio for you guys, so
Nice.
That's an accomplishment.
What was it like when you were, let's say, 2/3 of the way through the cleaning?
I'm very excited because this is a new space for me. I've barely gotten to show it to anybody. I just moved in before everything got shut down.
Oh,
so
wow.
This is the first time I've seen it too.
Nice. It looks beautiful. Can we see a quick tour? Can we see the?
Yeah, I think. Let's see.
It's beautiful. What?
And I do like to have like the weirdest things I've made in this area because I'm going to be having workshops here. So I don't know if you could see that, but I have this big thing made out of just like a bunch of jewels that were like thrown onto a paper.
I love it.
People thinking out of the box and like not stressed out about painting.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's jump in. So Jasmine, you're growing up, what were some of the biggest influences, elementary school, middle school, and how you grew up and how that's influenced you now?
Okay, interesting question. I think I feel like I almost started on this journey somehow when I was in high school. I was really interested in the sciences and studying patterns, natural patterns, which is what influences my art today. And it's the same thing that got me into coaching. Just turned into like patterns of the mind. And I think the idea that I'm still on that same journey, just like always trying to research new things and then try to figure out how to share these things with more people, so that I can help them follow their dreams and passions and have their own journey.
What was the first piece of art that you created in high school that you felt like, yeah, this is something?
Um, so I actually didn't start like pursuing art professionally until I was 20. When I was in high school, I actually thought that I was going to be in a research lab. So I don't know if I had that in high school. I think I always just thought it was a way for me to process information, and I wasn't really making it for other people originally.
That's right. I can see that. So when you were 20, what happened? What got you into art?
So I started my art journey when I got very sick when I was about 20. At the time, I was actually in medical school. I was in an accelerated medical school program that starts straight out of high school.
Mm.
And I had to take time off. I had to have multiple major surgeries, and I didn't know if I was going to get better. I had to relearn how to walk, and I spent about a year completely bedbound. So that also gave me a lot of time to like think about what I was really doing, and I realized I always wanted to retire as an artist. That was always my plan. I thought, okay, I'll just, do some research, do something good for the world, and then I'll retire and live my dream. But getting sick so young made me realize how ridiculous that is. Like, what was I going to wait 40 years to do that when I could be doing it now?
Wow. I can't even imagine the internal journey you went through in that whole process. What were the biggest takeaways, and like looking back at that now on that journey?
Absolutely, the biggest takeaway is don't wait to follow your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Do them today, because you never know what could happen. Let's see. It also really gave me a lot more compassion, I think, and empathy. Just looking around at other people, because one of the things that happened while I was going through this is I had to wear this giant back and neck brace, and people stared at me all the time. So it gave me, and that's how I got well known for rock climbing, is because I was rock climbing in this giant thing. But yeah, I think it just really gave me a new insight into like, yeah, I was wearing that kind of like baggage or hindrance on the outside of me, but almost everybody has something like this on the inside of them that you don't know about usually.
How does coaching, or how did coaching tools, or let me ask it anyway, what coaching tool did you feel like had the biggest impact on your journey from, when you first started coach training to now?
The future self. I really like the future self exercise. Yeah, and I've been, the last year I've been on my own journey because I've been transitioning out of trying to be a full-time studio artist into more of the teaching artist realm. So I was taking the wellness coach training, the first one, and I was also in a program that teaches artists how to teach. So the two of those things came along together really quite nicely and have given me a lot more insight into what I really want to do with my life. And I remember when I was doing that exercise originally, I thought, oh yeah, I'll be in my studio painting and I'll like be a famous artist. And then a year later, I realized, no, that sounds stressful and not really what I want to do.
I was just going to say, you're coach training EDU famous now. Like, we're having, like, you're being broadcast throughout the world and interviewed. If your 10-year self would come into this room, what would she say? If she were to join this webinar, what would she say?
In 10 years?
Let's say, Jasmine, your 10-year future self were to come in to to come in and join you on this webinar. What would she say? Or what would she say about how you're doing and where you're at?
I think that this time period that I'm in right now is like the beginning of me bringing the studio out into the world instead of hiding in the studio.
I just feel so happy for us, for you, for the community, for you sharing this with us. Yeah, let's get to it. Let's jump in. So you have an exercise. We chatted about this
Yeah, the
last
creator's
week.
journey.
All right, let's do it.
Are we
So
gonna
you're
set
gonna lead me through it, and
Yeah.
I'm a proxy for all of the everyone watching this, all the people. So I'm going to be doing this as a proxy for humanity. Right?
Can we pull up the image?
Yes, let's do it.
So the creator's journey is like an offshoot of the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's monomyth, but instead of focusing on the hero, the creator's journey focuses on the creation or like the thing. So the creation itself is like the hero, the center stage to the journey instead of the person in the journey.
So you want to show the visual? You can share a screen.
Oh, okay.
And one thing, Jasmine, I just want to say I really appreciate about what you're bringing and what you bring is the visual of like your ability to create or look at an idea and then create a visual for it. Because I remember when I was in I was in a training course for coaching, and one of the trainers she showed an image of a tree, and my understanding of coaching, helping professions, it just snapped a lot of things together. And so this value of visual, I feel like, is so useful to people. It's one of the things I'm really curious about. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always trying to translate, like, I kind of live in the middle between like the analytical world and the creator world because I do like research and reading. So I'm always trying to like translate these really highly analytical things into the most simplified picture possible.
I love it. And that's important work. This is excellent. All right, Jasmine. So where do we start? Where do I start?
So I'm going to start by asking you, are you building something new right now? It could be either a project or it could be a lifestyle.
Yes, I am building something new right now. A lot of a lot of new things. I'm racing through my head of which one to look at. I think. Well, I mean, this podcast is new, right? Like this, the Coaching to Flourish podcast. This is episode. What are we? Episode 5 or 6 right now. So I mean, this is relatively new. Amois and I were putting together an idea of, an app that can connect people who are looking for coaches to people who have been coach trained, to try to facilitate that. Coach Training EDU, I mean, continues to put things together. Yeah, Justin, what would you suggest? What would be the most?
I think one of the first two. It should be something new. Whichever bigger.
Let's do this podcast. It
Okay.
feels a little meta, but let's go for it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the first section that we're going to start in, and this is written this way because if you're doing this on your own, you can either fill these out like a cartoon, or I would encourage you to write this like a graphic novel or short story. Make it fun and like fanciful.
Excellent.
So the call for change. So when did you decide that you wanted to do this podcast?
When the world went on self-quarantine, and it felt like that as a people, as humanity, there's this call for us to reorganize, and the word of 2020 seems to be pivot to a new way of being, a new way of connecting, deeper empathy, more energy, holding sadness, but also continuing to keep the flame of hope alive.
Oh, I love that. And what skills do you already have that can help you make this happen?
Right, right. Well, I mean, we are an online coach training company. So I feel like we've lived in the online world now. We have been training people remote for over a decade. Uh, the whole coach training EDU team works remote. And I feel like a lot of the participants are talking about how grateful they are that they've had this experience to be able to still connect on a heart to heart level while online, and how in this transition of being isolated, they have the experience of still having these heart connections virtually, which is really valuable. Like that's not something that they need to also, um, learn, or, that's not part of the learning curve here, but that's something that they can rely on, in this transition. So I feel like there are a lot of skill, like we're in a really good spot to do something like this right now, just given the, what we're coming in with.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Right.
So I don't know if you've stepped into the area of unknown yet or if you're about to.
Right.
That would be how you define it. But so for this next segment, we would either be thinking about something you recently went through or something in your future. You want to ask yourself, what are you going to need to learn in order to make this podcast a success?
I love these are my this is my standard question, Jasmine. This is my trademark question, or my signature question. What are you learning about yourself? I feel like this is a question that I ask almost every single coaching call, and I feel like it's one that is you can almost ask it at any circumstance to anyone, and it will still make sense. What am I?
Yeah. What new territory are you in? Even though you're already familiar with doing things online, what's different or new about the podcast?
Right, right. It's interesting. I wonder what is, like, what's the reaction of the audience? What are the people most interested in, and what skill, like what's the skill level that, overlaps coaching, like being a coach with being an interviewer. Those are not the same. And I feel like sometimes as a coach, I can jump around more, like trust my intuition more and go, oh, it's interesting. Like even hearing you talk, Jasmine, I get so excited because I feel like on your journey through this, like you've gone through a really like unbelievably life challenging situation and have come out on the other side to find deeper meaning, more flourishing. You're basically living your dream like 4 decades in advance from where you may have done it.
Yeah,
And that to me is a wow. That to me is like, what internal journey did you go on? As a coach, I could get in there and go, zoom, just like a ping pong ball. But I feel like as an interviewer, it needs to be more linear, or at least more understandable to everyone here. here. Uh, so yeah, that's what I feel like is different.
okay, so it sounds like you're going to have to learn more about being an interviewer.
Right. Yes. That's it.
Okay, that's definitely an unknown territory. That'll
Yes.
be your unknown
This is new.
territory.
This is new.
All right. So once you step in there and you start learning about how to be an interviewer and you figure it out and you're doing well, there's going to be a lot of trial and error. So this is an area where you would think about what kind of obstacles you might have to face and how you might overcome them. You're going to want to think about what kind of support network you have and what availability you have to outreach or outsource anything that might get in your way.
This is growth mindset feedback 101, right? The idea of taking a step and seeing and getting feedback from it. Yeah, I love this. So if I were to answer the question, it's just continuing to do these episodes, continuing to do the podcast, continuing to learn from them, getting feedback from the community, hearing people's comments. And by the way, if you want to go to the blog on Coach Training EDU to share comments or Q&A, we're going to have a Q&A time here at the bottom. if you have questions about the 40-minute mark. Jasmine will answer the questions from the community. And how we continue to build community here. I mean, I feel like that's a lot of what we're trying to do outwardly. And this is a part of it. I mean, you're being here, you're offering this and being on next week as well, next Wednesday, to offer, a workshop. A lot of what we're trying to build is trying to see is how can we build community? What works, what doesn't, what do people want? Things like that.
Feedback from the community. I think that's a really interesting thing we should take note of, because part of the exercise is also trying to explore like a deeper aspect of what it is that you're trying to build. And you haven't mentioned community until now.
Right.
I'm also going to ask you, what's your internal superpower that's going to help you get over this mountain? And the mountain is like when you're climbing this mountain, and you might bounce back and forth between trial and error and then stepping back into a different unknown and trying something again and back into the unknown. What's that one thing that you know about yourself that's going to help you get over the mountain?
I am endlessly curious. And I think that the idea of curiosity as like, when I look at this and this, this podcast and this, outward community of Coach Train EDU that we're building through this, there's a level of care. Like it's like an orchid, that I get to take care of and watch flourish. But there's a curiosity of how much water does it need? How much energy does it need here and there? And what does the energy need? That's the superpower. It's this ability to stay curious.
I really like that. And that's really interesting too, how that relates back into community and feedback, because you're in a mindset of curiosity, then you're going to grow so much from that.
Right.
I like that. So the next phase here is once you get this podcast up and running and it's a success, you're going to want to think about some alternative ways that it could become a success, because the way that you get over this mountain, it may or may not be your original plan.
So what's the question? I feel like it's a prickly question, and I love prickly questions as a coach. So what's the prickly question, Jasmine?
The question is, what are some alternative ways that you could still accomplish the same goal?
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. I don't even have a plan. I mean, I know that a plan B will come up, but it feels like this is it. Like this is that feeling of doing my life's work. Like I was born to do this work. And I know we talked about it, I know the same feeling in different ways. I mean, it might be just making standalone videos, not doing these live, but making maybe 10-minute standalone sketches about life coaching concepts, connecting with authors, books, doing book reviews. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I feel like in some ways it can be endless, but it's all along the same river channel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was asking for. Just
cool.
Things that are essentially the same, but they might have a different name or just be accomplished in a slightly different way or medium.
Right.
Just taking an inventory of the alternatives.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We don't know what's going to happen. We hope that the podcast is going to launch, but if not, we know that whatever will happen, we'll still be accomplishing the same goals.
Right.
And
it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I feel like what this does is it takes me to places that I see or like have sort of lurking there, but it makes me look at them and say them out loud, which is, I think, a lot of the value of coaching. And it definitely does feel journey-like, for sure. Like this, it feels very geographic. Like the thinking feels very geographic right now. Like I'm on, like from the mountain going down the river. Eventually I'll get to the sea, but that's where we're at,
Yeah. So the next phase would be acceptance and rebirth. It's called rebirth because this is assuming you might have to alter your original idea a little bit. So the vision is going to have to be reborn. And it's called acceptance because not always, but usually when you're creating something, you're going to have to lose some amount of control. So the question for this one is, how much are you willing to let go of control over this project?
Wow. These are good questions, Jasmine. Like, this is good stuff. This is really good. Okay. I mean, I feel like what this does, it points to all like the pain, I mean, all the pain points, but this is the time when it's like, when I have to think, how does this journey, it's releasing myself to the game. What's being required? What does the mission require of me? And then how much do I have to let go of what I want to see it and where it goes? Absolutely. Wow. That's a wow. I think I have to let go of of the idea of what it might look like, and just follow the energy, really loosening and allowing it to be and evolve in a way that it wants to. I can see that.
I like that a lot. Are there any changes in lifestyle that you would have to go through to accommodate having this podcast?
It's surprising how much work goes into the back end of arranging the interviews, lining it all up, making sure all the links are working and everything is in the spot. That's amazing, but not in a sense that it's, how do I say this? It feels like these talks, these interviews are infusing the whole team and community with so much energy that I can feel it. I can feel the energy, going through the organization and community. So short answer, no, not much, but it aligns with the work that we're already doing. Just with more energy.
Yeah, okay, cool. So, and it sounds like maybe somebody else could help or step in to check on the links and do some of the back work.
Totally. And Ashley's been awesome. Jasmine's been awesome. Amois has been amazing. I just feel like the team is strong. Absolutely.
So that kind of moves us into the last phase here, which is integration and reconnection. And it's called integration because it's about developing a sustainable lifestyle around your project or idea. It's kind of coming out of the push really hard, just get it done, put in all the extra energy, period, and making sure that what it is that you're building, you can actually sustain in your life. And then reconnection is going back to the bigger idea of what it is that you're building and how it relates to the world, which you've really touched upon throughout the whole wheel.
This feels like finally getting that little craft to the ocean. Like we live in Hood River, which is about an hour east of Portland, and on the Oregon Trail. And sometimes I think, have you played Oregon Trail like that? You play that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, a long time ago.
Right? Yeah, it brings me back to elementary school. And you can buy the raft and take the raft down the Columbia. I feel like the raft on the Columbia is now like getting to the ocean. Like we're passing Astoria and getting to the Pacific, and really reconnecting to the wide world. Like we've made it, the end of the journey.
Yeah. So if you go through this whole journey with a podcast and you've got speakers and people are listening and people are excited, right, and things are all going as planned, how would you define success at the end of the journey?
Two ways. There's an internal and an external. Internal, there's a feeling of, and I know people share this feeling, this often happens in the coach training, in the coaching world, where there's a feeling of such deep heart connection that it feels like this is where I'm meant to be right now in this life. there's no question that this is both stretching and pushing, and at the same time, a feeling of being born to do this work. And I feel that. And once it's almost like, it's like climbing a mountain and seeing a beautiful, fantastic, magnificent view and knowing that, yes, the work was worth it to get to this point. And I think part of it, the other half, like the external, will be the continuation of this podcast. In my mind right now, I have a year mark, a milestone. Can we do 2 podcasts a week for an entire year? That's the external sustainability mark. And that's what we're looking at right now as a team.
That's exciting.
Yeah, we're scheduled out through mid-May right now. So we're a month ahead, almost 6 weeks ahead in terms of scheduling. Yeah, it's fun. It's happening. So Jasmine, what's it like? What's it like to lead me through this exercise live, knowing that you have, a couple dozen people watching, and here we are in this webinar?
That was really interesting. It was really surprising to me. I'm really glad that my questions made you think, because sometimes I know as a coach, you can go through so many of these exercises so often that it's hard to even answer them spontaneously, but I could tell that, you're really thinking there, and thank you for choosing something that is really actually new to you.
Right. No, thank you. It's interesting how coaching, I feel like the questions might be simple, but there's such a power in still asking the simple question. And I love graphics like this. I feel like what they do is they help take, and this is not usual in the coaching world. Like what you're doing, Jasmine, just so you know, is something that traditionally in the coaching world, people do have graphics and they have, models and things like that they use, but it's not a native thing to coaching. Coaching, in some level, there's a push to be fluid and not to have these kind of graphics, but these things help. These visuals are so powerful. What process, when you create these visuals, what process do you go through? When do you know that you have the model and it captures the idea that you're after?
So far I've mostly been coming up with these to try and solve a client's problem. To try and help them think about something in a new way. So it's when I'm working with somebody and I see that there's a gap between what I know and how to organize the questions in the right way. Because usually I send these for between sessions. I don't usually do them during sessions, actually.
Wow. So you're using your coaching session as a microcosm to create a useful tool for as a macro.
Yeah, and I didn't really set out to do that, but as I went down my coaching journey, I couldn't find anything out there that really made sense to me for other people. And so that's why I started creating my own, and they're my own style. I think a lot of my coaching relates a little bit more to community, and I really try to push people to reach outside of themselves. And even though we're on a personal journey together, not to just make the coaching session about them.
Wow.
And I think I don't work in a linear fashion either, which is really different than most coaches.
Right. So what fashion, the unlinear, what's on the other end from linear?
I think working in a network.
Right. I'm so curious, what was your first, what was the first push to get coach trained?
That's a good question. I thought you were going to ask me that one. So I actually thought about that.
Yeah.
It's funny. Somebody asked me to coach them about a year ago, and I had no idea what coaching was or why anybody would ask that. I was very confused. So I went to read more about coaching, and The person who'd asked me, it was through a health blog that I was running specifically about this condition that I had. So I was blogging and like posting a lot of helpful tips and tricks and things like that. And I kind of started to think, well, maybe I could be a coach that specifically works with young people with chronic illnesses. And it also related back to me wanting to help people and get back out of the studio and more into the world. And I just signed up for your class. It was I did a lot of research, but yours was one of the first that I really resonated with. And I just kind of tried it. I didn't really know that I was going to actually pursue it until I connected it back to art.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Here, let's stop screen share for a minute.
Oh yeah.
So we can see.
Oh, you got it.
Bigger. There you go. You got it. And then, so new coaches, right? Let's say someone who's just starting their coaching journey. What advice would you give a new coach just starting out?
I think the biggest thing that I had to think about that really linked me into being able to like go for it was figuring out why I wanted to be a coach and really understanding what I have to offer and like, you know, the unique part about me.
How would you articulate that unique part?
The biggest thing that comes to mind is probably how non-judgmental I am and how really truly open I am to strange ideas, strange lifestyles, alternative goals. I feel like I'm somebody that can work with a wide variety of people that sometimes fall out of what any kind of normal coaching is like geared towards. I'm really open to working with people who work and think in different ways and who see the world differently.
So let's say some creative artist who chooses to work between like 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., like a night owl who cranks at night is like your idea.
Yeah, or people who have really strange habits or obsessions or just, you know, a lot of these things that if you would go to a normal coach, they'd probably say, well, don't do that, or this is obviously in your way. I think I guess being a unique person myself, I'm very open to helping you live the life that you want to live, not the way that I think you should live.
Wow. Where does that, when you talk, there's so much power. Where does your power come from?
I guess it goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning of this talk, where I was really young when I figured out that I was on some journey.
Yeah.
And I just have never let go of, I guess, that thing that a lot of people sometimes lose or put away in their childhood. This like just deep passion to just show up in the world and give and be what you can. And I'm not sure if that answers it exactly. Where does it come from? I don't know, but I know how to maintain it. And that is what I want to share with people, is the way that I maintain that thing is through my creative practice. Because when I make art, it's almost like a discussion between all the different parts of me and trying to figure out how to like manifest that idea into reality. I think doing that over time through any type of creative practice, like it could be music, writing, even cooking or list making, whatever it might be, or however you express yourself, I think that's the way that you hold on to it. So that's why I say that my art saved me. I think that's why I didn't get too lost during going through so much trauma.
Wow. Yeah, there's something about your breaking through assumptions that is so compelling and powerful. Like even your journey that you went through, your medical journey and the journey of recovery and to break through, I mean, massive assumptions that must have come up in that, and the gift to others of your, I mean, to be a coach for those who live, you know, creative lifestyles. I mean, that's a huge need. What do you find are some of the common assumptions that you help people break through?
Living up to expectations is definitely the biggest one. And I think I did kind of have to go through that journey myself because, you know, I went to medical school. I was going to into the sciences. It's like, why was I doing that in the first place? Is because I thought that that's what I should be doing. That's what I was raised to think was a job. So I think a lot of people still have lingering assumptions about how to have a career and what that means in today's society. I think our society also tends to emphasize success in ways that don't always align with how people are best able to help. General assumptions probably that you need to have certain type of credentials or qualifications to do anything. A lot of people are waiting and waiting to do something, to get a degree or take more training or do this, or before they'll just go ahead and do something.
Right. Right. Yeah, they wait until they can make it perfect before they even start.
Yeah, perfection. That's probably the biggest issue that I work with is perfectionism.
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Where do you think perfectionism comes from?
Fear. Fear of being judged, probably. Being judged on the outcome. I think if you could appreciate the process more than the outcome and release judgment of the outcome, then can probably erase perfectionism.
Right.
The media. I don't like the media. Probably comes from there too.
The idea of this is the perfect life, like this is what everyone should be striving for. It's pretty intense sometimes. All right, let's shift to some Q&A. And we have one from Amy. It's not really a question, but it's a comment. Thank you, Amy, for starting it off. This truly is so fun. It is fun to be part of what is happening at Coach Train EDU. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. And let's amp this up a little bit. So Jasmine, what next week, right? Next Wednesday, you're putting on another one of these workshops. So it's more of an interactive workshop where people are going to come and see and be seen, right? Or is it more webinar style?
I think I'm doing the creator's journey again, but where we can all see each other. Right.
So it's a workshop where everyone can see and be seen. And if you were to give a pitch or get someone there, what's the pitch?
I think you should come to this workshop if you want to learn how to define success in your own terms.
I love that. All right. So we got a question from Jasmine. Thank you, Jasmine. Jasmine on the Coach Train EDU team. Love the mention of perfectionism and the fear of being judged. Rings so true. Jasmine, what tools do you use most when helping your clients through these struggles?
I think the thing that helps the most is helping people be able to remember how they've gotten through past struggles and to see past successes really for what they are. I think a lot of people go through life and we face these struggles and we might say to ourselves, oh, that's not really such a big deal. But helping people try to understand that maybe some of those little things that they've overcome are a really huge deal. That's one thing. And then I do send people home with homework exercises sometimes to try to purposefully try something new, try something that they haven't done in an area where they can't judge themselves at all. So like there was a visual artist who tried new cooking exercises. So it'd have to be something where you don't have all those preconceived notions. So you're basically showing up expecting to fail and just doing that over and over again until you're fine with it.
Until you're like, failure proof.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Do you ever sell your paintings?
Yeah, definitely.
So do you have some, like, they're beautiful. Are any of those, I mean, I know it's like it can be a delicate question at times, but do you have like an online gallery that we could, I mean, they're beautiful. Do you have an online gallery where we could get some of these beautiful paintings?
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. I have like way too many. I have a storage too. So this is just my recent work.
Can you show us, can you show us, like, give us a close up and see and explain one, like where it came from? I know we didn't talk about this, but I just can't help it. Like, I'd love to see one.
We'll see. Let's see. So the three behind me are the most recent ones that I've finished, and they're supposed to be in a show right now that's canceled. So we'll see about that. Let's see.
So what is this one? The first one, yeah.
They all go together.
Okay.
They're not really different in any way, but they're all explorations of space and depth of space. And the last 6 months, I've really been exploring the idea that it's interesting. That's kind of where my website name came from, is chaos versus order. But when I was making these, I was thinking about the Big Bang and where space comes from. That's really the only explanation I could give so far on this one. Usually I write up something like a year or two later.
That's so awesome. I'm so impressed with art and creativity and the creative process through this. And it's not that any artist, owes explanation of work, but it's still lovely to hear the thoughts, to hear, some of the thoughts behind it. Here we go. We have a question from Vicky and then one from Marcy. Let's go with Vicky's question first, then we'll get to Marcy's. Vicky, I am writing a book and would love your thoughts on how to keep going.
Okay. So the first thing I think you should think about is, why are you writing this book? And what is it that you really want to accomplish with it? And I think the more that you can connect to like the deepest version of the purpose of the book, then usually you'll find motivation and inspiration in that to keep going. And if you can't find it, then maybe you just want to put it on hold and take a pause from it. There are paintings I put on hold for 5 years.
What happens to your relationship to a painting when you work on it?
Well, I call them my children. So there's that.
Very cool.
Usually what the painting represents is almost like this. I paint because that's how I process information. Like I said, it's kind of like this language I have between myself. And I don't always expect people to understand it, but I'm usually just trying to figure something out. And when the painting is finished, I've like figured out what that thing is in my head. And once it's done and I take a picture of it, I actually don't have any attachment to it at all. I'm like, okay, ready to make the next one.
Wow. So it's almost like an attachment to the process, but this process leaves evidence.
Yeah.
When do you know you've found the deepest version of your motivation in making a painting?
I know when I'm still working on it, when I'm doing it.
You in there?
Um, and I always have to reevaluate it. I don't do it per painting, but I definitely constantly reevaluate, why am I making art? You know, it's kind of big and bulky and
Right.
expensive. And I know, like, last summer, I had this show in the middle of nowhere, Missouri, and I'm just like, what is compelling me to put all these paintings up on this wall right now in the farm town? There is a reason, though. I think
Yeah.
something like a show is like a bigger version of making a painting. It's, again, processing something in a different way. And that particular show was a two-person show, so it's kind of like a conversation then that my art was having with somebody else's, and it represents something bigger, hopefully a conversation between more artists as well.
Right. Oh, I love it. I love it. All right, let's get to Marcy's question. How does your art allow you to express yourself?
Huh. Well, I think it goes back to the idea of that when I'm painting, and I do dabble in a lot of other art forms as well. I feel like that's a time when I'm fully in control of that painting. And I think that this is why creative expression can be so useful for people. Because maybe you can't say that you have full control over your life, but if you can show up at a piece of paper or a canvas and say, yeah, I have control over this process and I can trust myself to know what to do next, I think that exercise is like a form of inner power and expression between multiple parts of yourself that may not always come up. They may not always be the things that you want to talk about or feel are okay to be talked about.
Wow. It reminds me of coaching, like using visual metaphor and how powerful metaphor can be to capture ideas that seem elusive.
Yeah.
And it's like you are literally creating like handles for ideas for people to be able to process on the visual end.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I have another question from Amy, which I love, and I want to get both parts of it, Amy. She's curious, how do you place value on a painting? She's asking because they seem priceless. Like it seems like something that you put together, and like how do you put a value on that?
That is a great question. I have no idea. So I ask other people. I ask people that I trust, and I have a couple people that I ask, and then I compile that data and put a price tag on it.
So the three paintings behind you, just to make it super prickly, and I love prickly questions, they put people on the spot.
Okay.
What are the price of the three paintings behind you? The ones you just showed us.
They would each be $1,400.
I love it. I love it.
My small ones are all 125, the 12 by 12s.
Nice, nice. And then where, like, what can you on the blog, right? Can we have a link? Like, do you have a gallery where people can buy these?
There's a link to my art website. I have only the prices posted for the 12 by 12s
Okay.
on my website.
All right.
But if you have a question, you can email me. If they're not marked as not available, then they're available for sale.
Okay. We'll put a link in the blog to your art website. So I know people will see them, and absolutely.
Thank you. I mean, they need homes. That is a reason why I keep making art, is because, I really do believe that the world needs more color. And I like to think of my art as kind of like this disruption force to human efficiency and monotony. So that's something that compels me to keep making it. And I also really, really love it would be expensive to ship, but if you're like a wellness center, anything like that, I'm happy to like host my art in your space on consignment. I also do that. I really like having art in healing spaces. So you can also message me if you're interested about that.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, Jasmine. All right, another question. What happens to a project? This is from Michelle. What happens to a project that you come back to after a long hiatus?
Interesting. So I'll only start it again, usually if either I completely trash the idea and I say, you know what, I don't even want to do that idea anymore. I'm just going to approach this canvas as a background, just something that's already there and I'm just going to forget it. So sometimes that happens and I'm fine with that. And other times if I can't let go of it, then I do try to go back to what I was originally trying to express. And those usually do turn out the best, honestly. Because if I get stuck and really have to leave it, then it's an interesting communication between different styles of art that I've moved through.
Wow. All right, times for last questions, last chance. We have one more from Amy. I assume your version of a winding canvas would not be a different version of the same picture of experience. Can you describe what one would experience in your version of winding canvas?
This is a good question. I've been asked this before. I've actually been asked to do these, and I don't know, I have mixed feelings on if I'm going to do it or not, but I'm very into forcing people to become abstract artists. So
Right.
I would probably guide you through a series of how to make different sorts of messes. There's something that I do in a workshop where you have to paint with a string, and different challenges that will force you to have to let go of control over the art. Maybe even sharing a painting with somebody next to you who you don't know. We could try a whole lot of different things, but I would not be guiding you to paint like a cat or something like that.
I think next Wednesday, you're going to get a host of people there, wanting to create and wanting to do something. I mean, I feel a surge of energy. Like when I'm just talking to you, I just feel there's an element of, how do I put words to it? There's emotion. There's emotion here. And it's emotion that feels like, it's just beauty. Like there's an emotion around creating something beautiful and sharing it and capturing it, an idea, and then sharing that with the world. Where do you see this? Like, okay, so 2 decades from now, Jasmine, 20 years from now, where do you see yourself? What, like 2 future selves from now? What's that vision like?
I would like to be a resource to somebody who's in my position right now. As an emerging artist and a newer coach, and just somebody that kind of wants to go out there and try something crazy and like build something themselves. If I could somehow figure out, I actually thought about this. I thought about figuring out how to somehow set up a micro business loan type funding system and support system where creative and social entrepreneurs could get like a boost for their projects. And like, it could even be like really, really micro things. Like, and so people could do things in their community and make a difference. So I guess if I could somehow be funding that, that would be awesome. Although I don't know if I want to really be in charge of it.
Right. Get a team. Jasmine, it is such a pleasure. Thank you for being a part of the Coach Training EDU community and sharing today with us your brilliance, your creativity. There's no doubt that you're doing what you were born to do. I feel it. And I'm excited for you and excited for the community and everyone whose lives you're going to touch. Next week, you're on in a workshop style. So people have an opportunity to work, interact with you, which I'm thankful for. So you can keep an eye out for that. Links for that will be in the blog, the Coach Training EDU blog. Any other comments, thank yous, things like that, please go to the blog and comment. That'd be great. Jasmine, thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for bringing
Thank you so much for having me. And really, thank you for showing up to the exercise with something new.
Yeah, we talked about this last week, and we're going to try this out. I'll be the client for a little bit and see what happens. I did not know what topic. So I knew the process, but not the topic. And that was new. And it was lovely to do that spontaneously and bring that here. So thank you for that as well. Thank you, Coach Training EDU community. And I will see you on Thursday. All right, Jasmine, thank you. Thanks for showing up. Let's hop into, I'll send you a link here in a second, and we can continue this for a couple more minutes. Thank you, everyone. This is the Coaching to Flourish podcast. I'm your host, John Andrew Williams, and today we got to hear from Jasmine Raskas. Jasmine, you're brilliant. Thank you. We'll see you next Wednesday.